Pleasant good morning to all. Once again, welcome to our English class. In this video, we are going to enjoy the supplementary story, The Envious Neighbor. As we know, the envious means jealous. When somebody else have a thing that is very attractive, and you will have an instinct to get that object. That is called as envious or jealous. Here, it is an interesting story about a kind old farmer. They lived in a village. At the same time, they had a pet dog. They used to feed this pet dog with fish and titbit. Titbit means a tasty food. So wherever they went, they used to take the dog with them. One day, when the couple went to work in the garden, the dog stopped at a place and started to bark. So they suspected something will be there, and they started to dug the ground. While they dug the ground, they unearthed silver and gold pieces. At the same time, they gave a part of them to the poor and needy people, and rest of them they kept for buying rice fields and corn fields. At the same time, there lived another wicked neighbors in their village, and they were at the same time they were very jealous of others. With the selfish motive, they do all the wicked things to others. So here, the wicked neighbors, with the selfish motive, they borrowed the dog and took it to the garden. It walked along the garden without barking for a long time. At last, the dog stopped at a certain spot and began to sniff. Sniff means to get the smell. Immediately they dug they also suspected, and they immediately they dug the ground. They could get only rubbish and dirty things. So they were very angry and disappointed. At the same time, they killed the dog immediately and buried under the root of a pine tree. So this information was passed to the kind old couple. So they were heartbroken, and in the night they went to the place where the dog was buried, and they burned incense and adorned the grave with flowers. So when they returned home, while they were sleeping, the dog appeared in the dream to the kind old man, and instructed him to make a mortar, instructed him to make a mortar, to cut down the pine tree and make a wooden mortar. Mortar means it is a wooden bowl, as we see in this picture. It is used to store grains, as well as beggars also used to collect alms. So as per the instruction, they made a wooden mortar, and there also at the same time dog instructed them to ground grains on it. As they poured grains on it, it turned into gold and silver grains that became a treasure for them. And that also they gave a share to all the needy and poor people. So this was very well noticed by the wicked couple. So they want to earn lot of treasures in a wicked ways. So they borrowed this mortar from the young kind old couple, and and they grounded grains on it. Immediately, it turned into filth and dirt. They were totally disappointed and immediately broke the mortar and burned it there itself. The same night, the dog again appeared in the same night the dog again appeared in the dream, to the kind old man, and instructed him to collect the ashes of the burned mortar and sprinkle on the withered trees. It will revive. Revive means it will come back to life. Withered means dead trees. To sprinkle on the dead trees, it will come back to life. It will revive. As per the instruction of the dog, the old man did, and he went to the prince's palace where a lot of withered trees were there. So he sprinkled the ashes there. All the withered trees came back, revived, and it put forth flowers, and it was totally evergreen. So finally, the prince, he rewarded him with much treasure. At the same time, and by looking at the reward that was prince offered to this kind old couple, the wicked couple also wanted to get treasures, get a prize or award from the prince. So they also collected the ashes from the kind old couple and went to the king's palace and sprinkled the ashes, but they couldn't. But it was not successful. A part of the ashes that fell into the prince's mouth and eyes, and he started to suffocate. So the gods or the soldiers, they got very angry and they punished the wicked couple. Even the wicked couple did lot of misdeeds to the kind couple. Still, they forgave them and gave a share to them. After this, the wicked couple, they mended their ways and led a good and virtuous life ever after. That's a story about the envious neighbor. Now we are going to read the passage. Envious Neighbor, a Japanese folk tale, taken from a Japanese folk tale. Come to the first line. After 3 lines. In the old days, there lived a honest man with his wife who had a pet dog which they used to feed with fish and tidbit from their own kitchen. One day, as the old flock went out to work in their garden, the dog went with them and began playing about. All of a sudden, the dog stopped and began to bark. Bow, wow, wow, wagging his tail violently. The people thought that there must be something nice to eat under the ground, so they brought a spade and began digging. When lo and behold, the place was full of gold pieces and silver, all sort of precious things which had been buried there. So they gathered the treasure, and after giving alms to the poor, brought themselves the rich rice fields, cornfields, and became wealthy people. As I narrated the story, they had the old young kind old couple. They were very honest. And they had a pet dog, and they used to feed the dog with the fish and tidbit. Tidbit means tasty food, a small piece of tasty food. One day, as the old flocks went out to the one day when the couple went out to work in the garden, the dog started to bark, and they suspected there will be some eatables or food under the ground. So they called the people and brought a spade and began to dig the ground. So, to their surprise, full of gold pieces and silver were there. They unearthed everything, and they gave the part to the needy people, poor and needy people, and others, as well as they gave a little part to the as alms to the poor also. So, rest of the money they bought rice fields and corn fields, and they became wealthy people. Now it is interesting. Now in the neighboring house, there dwell a covetous and stingy old couple, uh, who, when they heard what had happened, and came and borrowed the dog, and having taken him home, prepared a great feast for him, and said, "If you please, Mr. Dog, we should we should be obliged to you if you would show us the place with plenty of money in it." So this was noticed by the wicked neighbors who lived in the village. So they want to, with this selfish motive, they want to earn lot of money, just like the just like how the kind people got. So they borrowed the dog. They gave a delicious food. They gave delicious food to the dog, and asked the dog to show the place where plenty of money were available. Here, the word obliged means. Here, word obliged means compel or forced. Compel or forced. Then come to the next paragraph. The dog, however, who up to that time had received nothing but snubs and kicks, from the hosts, would not eat any of the dainties which they set before him. So the old people began to get cross, and putting the rope around the dog's neck, and led him out into the garden. But it was all in vain. He led him where they might. Not a sound would the dog utter. He had now bow for them. At last, however, the dog stopped at a certain spot and began to sniff. So, thinking that this must surely be a lucky place, they dug and found nothing but a quantity of dirt and nasty offal, over which they had to hold their noses. Furious of being disappointed, the wicked old couple seized the dog and killed him. So they provided food for the dog, and asked the dog to show the place where the rich, plenty of money is buried in the ground. So delicious food was given. At the same time, it denied to eat the delicious food, and at the same time it was very silent. Finally, the wicked old couple, they tied a belt around the neck, and took it to the garden, and it went silently. At last, the dog stopped at a final spot and began to sniff. Sniff means getting the smell. So they thought it could be the lucky place, and they started to dig. and they could get only dirt and nasty offals. So uh, the, the wicked old couple, they were very furious and killed the dog and buried under and near the root of a pine tree. Then come to the next one. When the good old man saw the dog whom he had lent did not come home, he went next door to ask what had become to him. And the wicked old man answered that he had killed the dog and buried at the root of a pine tree. So the good old fellow, with a heavy heart, went to the spot. Having set out a tray with the delicious food, he burned incense and adorned the grave with flowers as he shed tears over his lost pet. So, this kind couple who lent the dog to the wicked couple, they were waiting for the arrival of the dog till late night, but there was no. But the dog did not return. So immediately he went to the wicked neighbor's house and asked where was the dog. The wicked old man told he had buried the dog at the root of a pine tree. So with a heavy heart he went back home. At the same time, once again he came to the spot where the dog was buried under the pine tree, and with delicious food on a tray, and also he burned incense and adorned the grave with flowers. Even he shed tears over the lost pet. That night, when the come to next paragraph. That night, when the old man was fast asleep in bed, the dog appeared him, and after thanking him for all his kindness, said, "Cause the pine tree under which I am buried to be cut down and made into a mortar, and use it, thinking of it as it were myself." So the dog, when the kind old man returned home, while he was sleeping, the dog appeared in the dream and instructed him to cut the pine tree and make a wooden mortar and use it and make use of it, and it disappeared from the dream. The old man did as the dog had told to him. Come to next paragraph. Told to him, and made a mortar out of the wood of the pine tree. But when he ground his rice in it, each grain of rice turned into some rich treasure. When the wicked old couple saw this, they came to borrow the mortar, but no sooner did they try to use it, all the rice turned into filthy. So, in a fit of rage, they broke the mortar and burned it. But good old man, little suspecting that the precious mortar had been broken and burnt, wondered why his neighbors did not bring back to him. So, this was noticed by, he made a wooden bowl and put some grains on it, it became turned into treasure. This was noticed by the wicked old couple. And they also did the same. They also did the same. But everything turned into, they borrowed the did the same, everything turned into filthy things. Then, so they got very angry, and they broke the mortar immediately and burned it. Then, come to the next paragraph. One night the dog appeared to him again in the dream and told him that what had happened, and adding that if he would take the ashes of the burned mortar and sprinkle them on withered trees, the trees would revive and suddenly put out flowers After saying this, the dream vanished. The old man, who heard for the first time of the loss of his martyr, ran out weeping to the neighbor's house, begged them at any rate to give him back the ashes of his treasure. Having obtained it, come to next paragraph. He returned home and made a trial of the virtues upon the withered cherry tree, which, upon being touched by the ashes, immediately began to sprout and blossom. When he saw this wonderful effect, he put the ashes into a basket and went about the country, announcing him as an old man who had the power of bringing dead trees to life again. A certain prince, hearing of this, thinking it might strange thing, sent for an old fellow. He showed his power of causing all the withered plum and cherry trees to shoot out and put forth flowers. So the prince gave him rich reward of pieces of silk and cloths and other presents, and sent him home rejoicing. So, as per the instruction of the dog, they cut the pine tree and made a wooden mortar, and they first put some grains on it. It became a treasures. As looking at this, the wicked couple also borrowed the mortar, but the nothing surprise gave to them. They could see only filthy things. When they ground grains, it turned into filthy things. So they were very angry and they burned the mortar. In the dream, the dog appeared again. In the dream, the dog appeared once more and asked the kind couple to collect the mortar, to collect the ashes of the mortar and sprinkle it on the withered trees. It will revive and blossom. As they tested, it was successful. They went everywhere. So a prince from a kingdom also heard this, and he asked a kind old man to sprinkle it on the plum and cherry trees. So it put forth. It was revived. So he was very happy, and he rewarded a pieces of silk, cloth, and other presents. And they went home very rejoicingly. So come to next paragraph. As soon as the neighbors heard of this, they collected all the ashes that remained, and having put them in the basket, the wicked old couple went out into the castle town and gave out. And he was the old man who had the power of reviving dead trees, causing them to flower. He had not to wait long before he was called into the prince's palace and ordered to exhibit his power. So the wicked neighbor also watched everything, and they too wanted to get lot of reward from the prince. So they collect the remaining ashes from the kind old couple, and they went everywhere and propagated themselves that they will also revive the withered trees. As they went to the prince's palace, and when they exhibited his power, nothing. There was no effect. Come to the next paragraph. When he climbed up the withered trees and began to scatter the ashes, and a bud and a flower appeared, but the ashes all fell into the prince's eyes and mouth, blinding and choking him. When the prince's retainers saw this, they seized the old man and beat him almost to death, so that they crawled off home in a very sorrowful plight. When he and his wife found out what a trap they had fallen into, and they scolded themselves. The good old man and woman, as soon as they heard the neighbor's distress, they sent for them, and after reproving them for their greedy and cruelty, gave them a share to their own riches, which by repeated stroke of luck had now increased a goodly sum. So the wicked people mended their ways and led good and virtuous life ever after. So the wicked couple also went to perform. Went to perform and the ash, put the ashes on the withered trees, as the prince asked them. So when they sprinkled the when they sprinkled the ashes on the withered trees, the flowers it started to bloom. At the same time, ashes fell on the prince's eyes, and he was eyes and mouth, and he started to suffocate. So the gods who are standing around him, they captured him and thrashed them severely, him and his wife severely, and they crawled off home with a sorrowful plight. At the same time, they blamed themselves. When this old man and the woman heard about this, they were very sorry, and at the same time they were very kind, and they went to them and gave a share of them, and finally they turned from their wicked ways and lived as a good people. That's the story of envious neighbor. So when you come to next class, I will teach you about identify how to identify character of the speaker, the meanings, the meanings that is given in glossary. At the same time, based and also the question answers. Go through the video 1 or 2 times and understand the story properly, and practice reading 2 or 3 times. Take a textbook, practice reading 2 or 3 times. Thank you. Have a nice day.